Good evening, everyone. Today, we're going to dive into something that most people are afraid to talk about, an uncomfortable truth that no one really wants to hear because it makes you feel uncomfortable. Imagine being in a room full of powerful people, and instead of playing nice, you decide to tell it like it is. And that's exactly what J.D. Vance did at the Munich Security Conference. And the reactions were incredible. The German response was actually to have a minister come up and weep. And he called out something that really brought to surface a choice that the entire West has. Now, what do we mean by the West? We mean the UK, we mean America, we mean Europe. And we also generally include Australia with that, so because it's part of the Anglosphere, the settlement from the former British, the British Empire that maintained British custom and culture and ethnicity. And so we generically call this the Anglosphere, but the West also encompasses the French tradition, the Spanish tradition, and their derivatives, the German tradition, and so forth. And there seems to be the Ukrainian war really brought up put a spotlight on a lot of these questions of what is the West about. I saw news articles, for example, in Europe after the Zelensky meeting with President Trump and J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Rubio. I saw that there was the European news was full of headlines that America is now an enemy of the West. And I thought about that, and I thought it was pretty inaccurate, because the fact of the matter is the traditions of the West are more kept in America than they are in Europe these days. Europe has undergone an incredible shift in the way it thinks, how it understands the traditions of its ancestors, how it understands the God of its ancestors, how it understands the governance and welcome to newcomers and the like. And because of these changes, and we're going to address both the good and the bad, but we're now at a crossroads, because at the end of the day, Europeans, Canadians, and to a lesser degree Americans are in the best spot for countries of the West. We aren't actually even at replacement rate for our own population. In fact, no civilization has ever recovered from the fertility rate we currently have. And that should be a very alarming thing. It's more important than global warming or climate. It's more important than issues of worrying about plastics and recycling and carbon. The fact of the matter is we have a demographic time bomb that's approaching us more rapidly every day. And the anthropological side effect is that the mosques are full and the churches are empty. Now, of course, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing depends on your perspective. But the West itself is at a crossroads. It has to determine what its foundation is and what its telos is, what its direction is. Felix, you've been around the planet long enough. Felix is in his 40s. I'm in my 50s.
That's right.
So you've been around long enough to see a bit of some of this change happen in real time. What are some of the things that sort of struck you in either American or European events that sort of struck you that the world is changing from when you were a little boy?
All right. So I guess I grew up in the 80s. And the 80s is very beloved nowadays and looked upon very fondly. And, I think rightly so to many degrees. But those were the Reagan years. I mean, it was very conservative back then. I if I had to pinpoint it, I kind of want to say it started during Bush, or really, really started ramping up during Bush, because there was like this backlash, this backlash against Bush that was really forming, that led to Barack Obama. Then once Barack Obama came in, it was kind of things really turned sour. I mean like race relations and things like that, and DEI, or like I would say the beginnings of DEI was starting to take shape in policy and stuff like that. And
so there was always affirmative. Well, it wasn't always, but there was affirmative action for quite some time. But are you saying that you noticed a shift in the President Obama years in terms of the sort of, he was elected promising a fundamental transformation? What does fundamental transformation mean to you?
Okay, so And for those who don't remember, or this is your first time watching, I was an avid Obama supporter. So I'm speaking from hindsight. I met Obama, I shook his hand, very briefly, but I was a big fan. And yeah, I was expecting change. I thought I was going to get free healthcare. Thought, I was going to get a bunch of good socialist stuff, socialist programs, free education, cheaper education, um, and the like, right? I could go on, but I think looking back, I didn't get anything. I didn't get any of that.
And that's what I was gonna
gonna
stop you. And this is the problem. Like I have friends in Canada and the United Kingdom as two examples, and I'm sure other European countries are similar. And they say, oh, we're better countries because we have free healthcare, but it's not as simple as that. I mean, you can certainly, if you need a bone set or something like that, it's pretty good and efficient and the like, but for a more serious illness, you can be on a waiting list a very long time, and many people die on those waiting lists. So it's free, but there's not, it's not the utopia that they present.
And I'll tell you what, I'll tell you a story. When I was in, when I was a teenager, I went to Cuba, and I think this kind of speaks to your point. I went to Cuba. While I was in Cuba, I caught pneumonia, really bad pneumonia. And the way else is, it's like, this was my process. They took me to the hospital. I walked in. They asked me for my name and my date of birth, and that's it. And then they bring me in. They gave me all the medication I needed, like right then and there. They diagnosed me. It's like, oh, it looks like you have pneumonia. You're gonna have to rest, this, that, or the other. They gave me the proper medication, and they sent me on my way. And that was a wonderful experience.
Right.
And then we went home, and where the lights were out and the plumbing was not, the house didn't have plumbing in the neighbor, and that was kind of the norm for the neighborhood. So and everything else was kind of like rock bottom poor. So it was nice to have the free healthcare. Don't get me wrong. Right. When I got sick, but everything around it was in shambles. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
You often see those pictures of the old cars and stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, like, it's okay. I mean, there's a charm to it. I loved visiting Cuba, and I love the people there. There was a lot of family, and there's definitely a charm to it. But don't get me wrong, it's definitely lower cost of living, or a lower quality of life. It's starting to open up now with some faux capitalism. I kind of even stopped following what they've been doing there, because they've been all over the place.
Well, the Chinese started adopting certain aspects of capitalism, and so it has some of the trappings of it, for sure. Like for me, I mean, it's bad enough that they sort of redistribute all the resources, whether you have very little say. That's bad. But what I'm always concerned of in these totalitarian states is freedom of speech, people monitoring you, neighbors ratting on you, this kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, and unfortunately, and this is what I was going to sort of segue into, Europe and Canada have become like this. And jeepers, under the last regime in the U.S., there was an attempt to make a minister of truth, essentially, and it was really bad. We really dodged a bullet. If it wasn't for Elon Musk, if it wasn't for this last election, we'd be in a real world of hurt. And I don't care whether you're a Democrat or Republican. I'm not trying to make this a political thing. What I'm saying is that if you're a Democrat, then work towards making your party less tyrannical. So because it was really bad. We really dodged a bullet, and that goes for good Democrats as well as Republicans. And really, I don't see the battle between Republican and Democrat so much anymore. It's really people of goodwill and not, and some people lean left, some people lean right. And but there's something. Did you see the Vance Munich speech in its totality?
I did see it. Yeah, I did see it. I can't quote it verbatim, but yeah.
Would you agree it was a bit of a scolding to Europe?
Yeah, he started off. I remember he said one comment, and then they clapped for him, and it was like a genuine, like, yeah. And he goes, he almost like chuckled. And he goes, I don't think I'm going to get more claps after this, right?
There wasn't a lot of claps. It was like I say, I don't think. You correct me, and if our audience wants to chime in there too, like in the comments, that's great. But I don't recall a single time where a president or a vice president made another government member cry, right? Like publicly cry. I mean, maybe they cry behind the scenes, but that was that was really epic,
And they,
and there was lots of applause for the crying. But I mean, I just looked at this and I just thought, you bunch of poofters, right? So I mean, I'm sorry if that doesn't match the empathy that some of you would expect from me, but I'm sorry. If you're a government leader, we expect you to be able to take the tough stuff and things you don't agree with, and you know what? If you disagree, then stand up and face it like a man, not like or like a person with backbone if you happen to be a female leader. But I think one of the things is that it really highlight an American approach versus a European approach. So when you go over to Europe, sometimes they, if you build a certain rapport, that they'll tease you and they'll tell you what they actually think of Americans and Canadians and Australians. They'll say that we're colonials, right? So there's this kind of disdain, and even in the church hierarchy, there's this notion that Italian Catholics and Spanish Catholics, French Catholics are somehow superior than American Catholics, who are, far too cowboyish, for lack of a better term.
Right. Less traditional.
Well, and then JD comes in with that speech, and he's a walking stereotype. I mean, all he needed to do was wear some chaps and a cowboy hat.
You come in on a horse,
right? And I mean, I'm all for it, right? Like, I mean, the sense that I think they need. I've always been the kind of person that I prefer truth over comfort, and Europeans, generally, it's the opposite. Not always, and there's a lot of Americans that prefer comfort over truth too. Really, I don't want to get into it too much, but that's the theme of the Matrix movie, right? The original Matrix is, the red pill was the uncomfortable truth, and the blue pill was the lie, but it was
steak dinner,
right?
It was that beautiful steak dinner. Yeah. You want the steak dinner, or you want the girl?
Yep. That's right. So I mean, I see it as a real path, and there's a. When you think about it, there's two big choices. The two big choices that the West has to make. Basically, there's the fortress society and the borderless world. So taking each path to an extreme, there's the fortress society and the borderless world. So the fortress society basically wants to see sealed borders, limited immigration, cultural preservation, and vetting of any newcomer, and a turn to nationalism. Now, nationalism can be a dirty word. Depending on your context, nationalism, we think of, bad things. We think of the National Socialist, for example. That's a very bad thing. That's a bad kind of nationalism. But then we can also think of the good kind of nationalism. When you think about it, the nationalism that both the Soviets and the Americans had for the space race to put a man on the moon, that was an example of where there was a competition that spurred both countries to great things. So that kind of nationalism was a good nationalism.
That is if we went, Father, but
right. Well, we're not gonna open that up today, but assuming that we do. Totally. And then the other thing is that the Olympics are another example. Actually, it's a kind of a hybrid thing, because on one hand it's a global event, but it's also a national pride event. So it's interesting that, again, these things. So I mean, basically there's arguments for and against both the positions, but we'll do the second position next, and the next is the borderless world. And the idea is open borders, and basically everybody just sort of has access to the same resources, same geography, and all that kind of stuff. And the argument with that is that there's no cultural boundary, and there's absolute freedom of movement, and eventually we work towards a globalist government. And I call this the Star Trek hope, right? Because people want, basically, they want the society envisioned in Star Trek, where
you want the Federation.
You want the Federation. Everybody they work if they want to work. They don't work if they don't. If they're really clever, they can go into a spaceship. But otherwise, they're going to have just a pleasant life of basically study or leisure or whatever. And it's really kind of funny, because the harsher AI, or excuse me, the harsher depictions of how it's likely going to go in science fiction are things like Asimov's Foundation series, or is it Spielberg that did the movie AI with the little kid, the little robot kid? That's a very disturbing movie. I think the Logan's Run, which was a very epochal movie, 1973, I think it came out. And Logan's Run was important because it was the first time CGI was really used in a movie, but also it was interesting because a Blade Runner is another one. It's a dystopian, these dystopian world views of how it's going to go, where the rich live very, very well, and the poor live very poorly. And then
Yeah.
you switch in this transhumanism stuff where, you sort of get what they call the cyberpunk genre, right? Where people are half machine and they're putting chips in their brain so they can, basically either have increased intellect or basically superhuman powers. And
And I
there's
think that's
all
a
of these.
total false promise, in my opinion. But
Well, it's interesting because whether we assent to it or not, these questions are coming. And it's really amazing to see, like, when you talk to people, you can have a group of people equally educated, whether you're formally or not. You can be well read. You might not be formally educated with university, but you can be a student of what's going on in the world and that kind of thing. And you really see people are disturbed with thinking about, extending some of these ideas out a bit, right? One of the other movies that I think are valuable for people to look at is Gattaca. Gattaca, I think, came out in the 80s or 90s.
No, that was the 90s. Yeah. I remember Ethan Hawke, but I never watched it. It's on my list because you recommended it.
Yeah, everybody has to watch that movie, right? Because there's certain things, like, I'm not, it's funny, I get on air and I talk about movies and books like Lord of the World and stuff, but I'm not like the movie guy. I'm not one of these folks that can quote movies and
that's me.
or watch a lot. I don't even watch a lot of movies. Well, I probably do more in my older age than I did when I was young. But what I'm getting at is that there's certain key works of fiction that are very useful as allegories or as thought tools to open up people's minds to thinking of different things. And there's a couple really well done works of fiction, in particular science fiction, that help us explore more important human ideals. It's funny, my father was a very pragmatic man, and he never appreciated my interest in science fiction. I read the entire, no exaggeration, I was an avid reader. I read the entire science fiction section of my local library. And my mother was the town librarian, so she would bring home like 4 or 5 books every week or more, and I would read them quick and would absorb them. And I read the entire library, the whole section, which was like 2 huge big shelves. And the thing is, those books were all from the 1950s for the most part.
Yeah.
And so my diet of science fiction was 1950s. And so for me, as somebody in my 50s myself now, looking at, how science fiction was portrayed in the 50s versus a Star Wars or Star Trek. So there's a very different genre. 50s science fiction is very much sort of like, we're colonizing Mars, we're colonizing Ganymede around Jupiter. It's all, the focus is about the exploration and the hardship once you get there. And it was interesting because, you have Elon Musk lands a rocket vertically like it was depicted in the 1950s science fiction. So it's so odd, like, just to see all that. But very, very interesting. But there's 2 different visions of the world, and it's funny, because it's interesting because the borderless people, they also tend to overlap into different environmental concerns and population concerns. They want to reduce human population, and they have very little interest in exploring the solar system. And I always found that interesting. Now, of course, some of our Christian audience, some of our traditional Catholic audience, don't believe there's much beyond, the sky as we see. It's sort of, it's almost like a Truman world. You could open up and that may well be. I'm not. I personally believe. Well, I think that at least the solar system is much how we describe it.
Right.
I don't know about the sun's position sometimes. Again, I want whatever's true. So I tend to side with the science. But if a smart person shows me the math works for other things, then I'm like, oh,
I'm all ears.
Right. Chandra X-ray telescope came up with some weird stuff. The Voyager space probes they sent out in the 70s are swimming through something weird. No one knows what the heck it is.
Right.
So I mean, these are just kind of little interesting scientific factoids. I just try to keep an open mind. But assuming that Mars, we could travel to it, and a lot of people think we can't, but let's say we can, that whole notion of the idea of that God may allow us to settle at least our solar system is kind of interesting, because the thing is that, I mentioned this, I think, in a show before. Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos both have private space companies, and the 2 of them, when asked why they do this, have 2 different answers. Bezos says he wants us off world to save the planet, and Musk says he wants us off world to save the species. And it's a subtle difference, but it's a big difference, because this notion that the planet is somehow valuable without humans, right? So that's one of the big divides. And I see this, I know it was a bit of a rabbit hole, but the difference between the fortress society and the borderless world, it's funny, the borderless world people actually see the world itself, the planet itself, as having intrinsic value apart from humanity. Whereas people that follow the sort of the fortress society model or a traditional Christian model see the planet as at the service of humanity. So it changes. It's like an operating system level difference that changes everything that you may look at. I just noticed my mic was off. Sorry, folks. It went off. So yeah, the thing is, it is an operating system level thing. Now, Tina's comment, I saw it a little earlier too.
Yeah.
I think this is interesting because, Trump's critics say that that's his biggest flaw, that he doesn't tell the truth. And I find it interesting because I have been on, and maybe Tina has too, maybe Felix has, I have been on the business end of someone accusing me of like not telling them the truth or being guilty of misinformation and all this. And it really strikes me. That's an interesting reaction when people hear things they don't like to hear, because I would never lie to win an argument. Like, I have lots of flaws. Like, I could give you guys 100 of my flaws easy.
Sure.
But I don't lie. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that I never could tell you an untruth. I could, because I misunderstand. If you say, hey, is it raining outside? I say, no, it's not raining. It turns out to be raining. And, that can happen. But, we all have our peculiar quirks. And just because I made a decision in my adolescence that I was going to be a person of truth and try to be of radical truth as much as I can. Now, if I had my mother here, she would, and I don't know if she ever watches this actually, but she'd disagree with me, because she'd say, well, what you're doing is still, like, because I'll deflect, or I'll ask you another question, or I can get people off the topic, but I am pretty good at not actually lying to anybody, right? So and that's a very hard habit to break in the beginning, because our whole social culture is to lie to preserve feelings. So to learn how to deflect and not get yourself into trouble or make someone feel bad, that's a learned skill, which you can practice, and it takes about a month, but you can learn to do it if you don't already. And so, but here's the thing, like, JD Vance goes in there and same with, Tina's remark about the license plate. And I think that's what Trump's big issue is that he's swimming in BS all around him. And he's just like, the only way out of the BS is to be truthful. And, here I sit with my beer, and President Trump hasn't even had a glass of wine or anything. That's his, again, we all have our quirks. I think he realizes, and I would agree, I bet you Tina would agree, I think Felix would agree, that we're not getting out of this hole, all for whatever our difference is. 90% of the problem is the lack of sincerity in presenting our side. Like, there's this scheme. There's a school of thought that thinks knowledge is power. Like, it is, but I'm talking about when people use it as a manipulation. Like, so I'm going to keep my cards close to my chest, because if I lay out all my cards, you're going to use that against me. And that can happen. But I would say it's well worth the risk, because the problem is that if you allow your whole culture to become used to white lies, Jordan Peterson has a whole bunch of stuff on this, on just being truthful. And it's one thing we can change in ourselves. Like I say, if you're in the habit of white lies to preserve feelings, it takes you about a month to break that habit. You have to really work at it. No, I'm not going to lie to anybody. If I do, I'm going to tell them right away. When you asked me if I thought that I liked that dress, no, I didn't like that dress, right? You're going to have to, it's going to take a month of pain to break the habit. But it's worth it, because then people regard you as, hey, I may not agree with this fool half the time, but I know he'll never lie to me. I know he'll never misrepresent facts in order to win an argument or make me look stupid or all this kind of stuff. No, I mean, but I found, that has a cost, and President Trump has learned this cost. Remember, he was a lifelong Democrat, and basically all his old friends turned on him because he was trying to solve problems. And again, love him or hate him, or you may disagree with his ideas. That's fine. That's not what I'm getting at. I'm getting at that I too when I try to bring home just truth, just facts, just scientific fact, mathematical fact, economic fact. Like for example, do you know that majority of the West, the U.S. isn't quite there yet, but the majority of the West has a fertility rate so low, no recorded civilization has recovered from it. Right? There is no historical precedent. So looking at the data, Europe's hooped, Canada's hooped. So, and the U.S. is, I think President Trump sees this. He's trying to hit a reset button. It's high risk. I say to my friends, hey, I only give them about a 5% chance of pulling it off.
Emergency brake.
Than the 0%. It's better than the 0% that everybody else has. So I think he's got to try to be bold. And again, it really has nothing to do with left or right politics. This is about this notion of how do we get out of the rut we're in? First of all, do we acknowledge we're in a rut?
Right.
And I'd say the people that get most upset with me and that I don't really get along with are not the people who disagree with me in sincerity. They're the people that they can't handle the truth. They want that blue pill. They can't handle the truth, and they get very upset if I ruin their utopia.
Well, yeah, no, it's a sad fact. There are people. I don't know, and I definitely want to say the left, when they start inventing new rules and just new realities just to kind of suit their sensibilities.
Yeah, what would an example be, do you think?
Well, I mean, the gender, if we get into gender ideology, that really, we were talking about this earlier at the end of the Obama administration, right? That's when we got legalized gay marriage. And we've mentioned this before. I remember laughing at the churches for stating that if we let gay people marry, it was a joke. If we let gay people marry now, the argument was that they're going to want to marry dogs, they're going to want to marry planes, they're getting, and we thought
the funny Felix was the lady who married herself, and there's more than one that did it.
There's more than one that did it, and. Yeah, no, someone married a tree, someone married an airplane, someone it really gets bizarre if you go down the marriage rabbit hole. But the point is, it is exactly what the church warned us against, and they were getting laughed
not
at.
Everyone in the church. I have to say, I remember it was the evangelicals that led the charge there, and I made fun of them in the 80s. I made fun of them. So
yes, same here.
I'm not so full of myself that I can't admit when I'm wrong, and I was wrong. So and the thing is, it's not about, people make it about hatred of different groups and stuff. It's not. It's just about what kind of society do we want to build, right? What do we, we can always accept things that are a little bit strange. Like, I'm very eccentric. Now, anybody who knows me, knows I have a lot of eccentricities, which is a polite way of saying, okay, you're a bit crazy, man. Okay, fine. But no, we all have our quirks, right? So the thing is that I think a society should be relatively, in terms of, just generic kindness to people when you meet them, you're on the street or whatever. There's no need to go out of your way to be vicious at people who disagree with you or who don't hold the same faith as you do or this kind of thing. By the same token, we shouldn't allow ourselves to be walked on, and we shouldn't allow ourselves to be considered one of many equals, right? So one of the things about Christianity, I think what Christianity has to say is, yes, we respect you. You're right to not believe as we do, but we're not going to sit here and tell you that we all believe in the same God. So I think that's one of the big things that modern Christianity has lost from ancient Christianity. And basically, we became one of many flavors, Every once in a while, I'm asked, do you want chocolate or vanilla ice cream? Right. And I always like the plainest possible. Right. So I go for the vanilla. That's just my thing. For me, food is fuel primarily. Very rarely is it an experience. Now, some of you watching are probably foodies. And for you, everything from the artistic presentation of the food to the components in the food to the smell and the rustle of the lettuce might be important. Right. But not what's going on there, Felix? We got a
you know what? I actually meant to let me get you back in there. No, I did have a pie chart that was tying into what we were just saying.
Oh, good. Earlier. No, you can face it. You hit the wrong button though. There it is. You might.
All right, so this is a meme. Yeah, I know, right? Why can't I? Now, this is a meme from like 2011,
Right.
right? And if you guys, you might have to, I don't know why I can't go in there, but this is a pie chart, and the pie chart is what will happen if gay marriage is legalized, right? This is from 2011. Okay, keep this in mind, right?
Yeah.
And then in blue, which is the chart, right, is as gay people get married, right?
Right.
And the colors that aren't on the pie chart, because you know, I guess the joke is that this won't happen. Is a third world war will break out.
Right.
Various plagues, locusts, frogs, etc. will erupt.
Yeah.
Schools will begin teaching kids how to have certain things, inappropriate behavior, and the terrorists will win.
Right.
From 2011.
Right.
I mean, like, again, like, this is something like I always kind of joke about this. I think like this is like God talking to us in a way. You know what I mean? Like through a meme, like using someone hubris, you know, on this topic.
Do you
That they
know?
they just joked around and prophesied the future 10 years or future 20 years.
Okay, so I'm wondering whether I can. So if I send something to you in Signal, you can put it on the screen, right?
I think so.
All right. So
that will be. You know what? No.
No. Okay.
No,
Well, I guess I
it's
can
in process.
I don't really want to share because I have all this stuff messed up. But I have an article here. I'll tell you what it says. It says Terry Newman. This is from the National Post in Canada.
Okay.
592 places of worship burned in 12 years in Canada. And the government doesn't care. And so I guess that what you shared and what I'm sharing right there segues into this notion is that there's two paths, right? Really, the path is towards Blade Runner, Mad Max, whatever, or it's to a restoration of the old faith and more traditional things. And so let's look at the problems with each path. So the first thing is that there's a concern with our population or demographics. We're not reproducing at replacement, and our whole economic system is based on perpetual growth. So I don't want to make it an economics class, but this is a real problem. The Japanese have addressed it by using a lot more robotics and things like this, but there's going to be skill shortages and an aged population. And what aggravates the problem is in most Western countries, actually America's the best of all of them, which should scare all of us because we probably all have friends who are engaged in some financial hardship. The fact of the matter is homes are not affordable for people anymore. So, you know, you could be looking at 10 times an annual salary with two people contributing to own a home, whereas years ago it was only 3 or 4 times. So there's a real problem. There's technological isolation. There is I guess the big thing is that some people would say the fortress mentality is not open to new ideas as much, and that, like, the problem with the borderless utopia is that there's a social infrastructure collapse. There's a collapse of the traditional family for a variety of reasons. It's not just because of different understandings of our the notion of marriage. That's a contributing factor, but and we're talking of the flesh here. We're going to talk about what God thinks in a minute, but you know, just in terms of the math, if you delete traditional family, if you encourage women to marry later and have children later, there's, you know, this is not in any sense a critique of anyone who has. That's what the world was designed for, right?
Yeah.
So, but what I'm saying is that when you think about it biologically, if our society was trying to work with our nature, you know, remember in the 80s and 90s, everybody was going on about organic. They don't do so the same way. I used to make me roll my eyes because I'd say, well, even dog poop is organic, right?
Dog poop's organic, exactly.
I didn't like the term. I just thought it was kind of silly. But I love the idea of non-pesticide food. I mean, I just didn't like the name. So
yeah, right.
So
how about clean food? Let's start with
right or something.
Food.
I mean, they could have came up with something, right?
Yeah,
but the thing is that the same people that want all this stuff, that want to work with nature, the minute you point out that, well, maybe we should be forming our children so that they could learn how to choose a partner younger, everybody freaks out. oh no, you don't want to ruin their life with marriage because there's so many people that aren't happy with marriages, and therefore they want to let their kids sort of be free for a while, and then they get married in their 30s, and everybody's busy with their career, and sometimes you don't start a family till you're late, and then and then that causes other problems. In some cases, people have to seek medical intervention. We're just not designed for it. And so it just always struck me funny is the people that were the most sort of in tune with nature, or said they were in tune with nature, are the least cooperative with their reproductive nature, right? So we again, I don't want to make this a rabbit hole down there, but what I am saying is it impacted the demographics. And then so the problem is the only way, how are you going to pay for all these pensions and all this stuff, right? So what people had to do, and who's going to do all the work, to occupy these jobs. So that's why there was an opening to immigration. And the problem is it's a double-edged sword, because we were used to in America and in other Western countries to an extent that immigration was always, you pick the cream of the crop from other countries, they come in and they contribute and they become adopted, and you're basically, they're one of you and you're one of them, and it's all great. But that's not what happened with the mass of Canada. If you look at the graph, like, it's nuts what they did the last couple of years. And the problem is that in too great a proportion, there's no assimilation into the national culture, the national narrative, so I get some Canadians very angry at me because I pointed out, I said, one of the things, I gave them a top 10 list of things to change, because right now Canada's sort of under siege. The US has been hitting that it wants to annex it. And, I thought it was just a troll, but I think the president might actually be kind of serious about it. And so I've changed my mind a little bit about that. I sort of see what he's getting at. We don't really, it's a failed state. Canada, I mean, people don't like to hear this. I get everybody angry at me. Listen, don't shoot the messenger. I'm not saying this out of hatred. Right. I'm saying that if you have, 9 years of Trudeau is proof that you don't know how to select a leader, right? Because this guy did everything he could to destroy Canada. He destroyed their industry. He destroyed their freedoms. He enacted War Measures Act, like the Emergency Measures Act, unjustly, unconstitutionally, which the court agreed that it was wrong, and no one paid any price for this. Everybody kept their pensions. Why? You violated constitutional rights. They arrested pastors. They they froze the bank accounts of single moms, and without any due process, without any court order, with less legal authority than a traffic ticket. And I had one Canadian make fun of me the other day and said, well, at least we have a better democracy than you. And I did this research. You're going to love this. You guys look it up too. The last time Canadians had a prime minister that had over 50% support of the population was in the 50s with John Diefenbaker. There's a guy that Brian Mulroney got a little bit, like it's 50%, but it was like the decimals. The first clear majority was back in the 50s, and they want to lecture us on democracy? I don't think so, Tim. And they've got a guy right now, this Carney guy, who, hey, Dale, they got this Carney guy, less than I think, like, I'm going to get, if you guys can fact check me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is it was like 150,000 votes for this, what Americans call a primary, Canadians call a leadership convention, 150,000 votes. But there's a 530,000 or so were eligible to vote, and all these people that wanted to vote couldn't do so. And then when the votes were tabulated, he won in all the places, even where his competitors were. Right? That doesn't make any sense. You know darn well, right? Like, I mean, right. If President Trump took Delaware, there's probably something wrong, right? Like, I mean, Joe Biden's going to take that, right? So, I mean, that's what I mean. Like, your hometown is going to root for you typically. So there's funny business is what I'm saying. And then Romania, some of you guys know about this. Romania, they annulled an election, a proper democratic election, but the EU didn't like the result. The guy was a Christian nationalist, so they got rid of him. They just annulled the election. They imprisoned him. And the thing is, and then they want to recruit all their own people to send them off to Ukraine. Who is going to die for censored speech and annulled elections and all this kind of stuff? Hey, Cynthia.
Let me read her comment for those that are just listening. Cynthia says, we would be better off owning Canada, in my view. The new guy, Carney, ran the Bank of England and sits as head of WE department. He's a radical globalist.
Yeah, I'm so proud of Cynthia. So I mean, some of my audience I know in real life, and I know Cynthia in real life,
Yeah.
and people like you and Tina and Dale. I mean, it's really great because you're very well informed, and there's a lot of people that are like ostriches. They stick their head in the sand,
Yeah.
and it's absolutely right. This guy is a child of the world, blah blah blah. As Felix says, we were the reason why we're not saying the name is because it flags the algorithm. So it's kind of
Right.
funny. Anthony Stein, if you watch him, he's always using code words. I'm going to have a little sheet that you guys can download, and that's all the code words. But basically, yeah, this gathering of globalists,
Yeah.
he's one of them. And he actually said, you can't make this stuff up. Okay, seriously, if you Google this, I should have thought about giving you guys this as some B-roll. Like, Scott Adams, the famous cartoonist of Dilbert, he has this theory. Like, he loves Christians, but he's not Christian, right? So he believes that we all live in the simulation, which of course I disagree.
Right.
But I got to tell you, I always love it when these weird things come up and I say, see, there's a data point in favor of Scott being right, because some things are just so weird. Like, you can't believe it's true, right? So Carney gets out there and he says, he admits, he brags. He like you can't make this stuff up. He brags about being an elitist and a globalist. And he says, well, that's what Canada needs. So he brags about it. Like, I mean, like, oh my goodness, it's like saying I used to be a crack addict, right? And I still like to do it on weekends, right? You're like, why are you bragging about that, man? Right?
Right.
So
Exactly.
So he brags about that. And then the other thing that comes out, he hasn't lived in Canada for like 11 years. His house is in New York. He moved all of his Canadian business to New York. You'd think he'd be on Trump's side or something, right? The way he's doing it. But no, he, like Trudeau, they want these carbon taxes and net zero and all this. And the problem is that they're going to cause the suffering of millions of people so that they can virtue signal to their little globalist friends. And it's really a managed decline. They want the world population down to 500 million. This is all on their website. You don't take my word for it. Go to their website and you read. You'll own nothing and be happy and all this business. And there's a big cricket plant. They harvesting crickets. I think it's 12 million tons or something nuts of crickets they make outside of London, Ontario. I think the company's called Aspire.
Yep.
So again, someone can fact check me on this.
They'll move on to worms. They'll move on to I think there's worms too, mealworms, and
and right now it's used primarily in pet food, but I can guarantee you, like these guys, it's part of their plan. You can read it on their website. They want us all eating that because it's supposedly better for carbon. And the thing is that we let them cook us like a slowly cooked lobster in the pot. And the problem is, this is going to scandalize some of you that watch this. I'm sorry, you're going to get like the JD Vance. I should get my cowboy hat on or something. Get the figurative cowboy hat, because you're going to get the truth that's going to be disturbing. And here it is. The churches are all in on it. They're all in on it. So all the postmodern churches, they're all part of the machine, right? Because the thing is, the traditional churches of the various families of Christianity, we short circuit the mainstream media narrative. We can preach against it. Our pulpit system can preach against it. But as much as the traditional movement in the various parts of Christianity are loud, and we have a real dominant position on Twitter and even YouTube, not my channel, but I mean the movement as a whole, we're small. We're small. It's so bad that a lot of chapels, like they have a hard time finding their, who's going to marry my kids, because they got a chapel of 20, 30 people. And then, of course, if they're far away from another traditional church. But the thing is, it's important for kids to marry sort of like minds if they're going to form families young, because jeepers, you get that wrong, you're just adding. The world is so challenging. Like when I look at Tina and Felix and Cynthia and Dale and all of us were plus or minus 10 years, within the range, right, of age. And when you look at it, like, we had a really good childhood. Probably, well, I don't know about individual, household, but in terms of the world we grew up in, and sure, there were things that were hard, but they weren't anything like our kids or grandkids have to look at now. We didn't have to worry, not in the same way. Like and then you realize that the real enemy against all of us right now is what Tina mentioned with Trump's sign, like his license plate, truth. Like, The biggest enemy right now is that people aren't telling us the truth. We can handle disagreements, folks. We can handle, listen, you know, if you want Canada to be part of the 51st state, great. You don't, great. You know, this is a matter of opinion. This isn't worth losing friends or family over. This is, you should be able to have a rational discussion and make your case. And, you know, I tell Canadians, by the way, I'm getting on a rabbit hole, sorry, but I tell them, the U.S. doesn't want you guys as 51st state because that would be 50 electoral college points for the Democrats, right? Like if you're a Republican, why would you want Canada? You don't. Now,
exactly.
They might want Alberta. Now that, see, that's what I figured. So you can write this down in your little calendar to see if Meagle's prediction is correct. But if I was to guess how it's all going to play out, Alberta will separate and apply to be a U.S. territory, and Saskatchewan will follow, and Quebec will go independent, and the remainder of Canada, the eastern part, will try to remain intact for a time. And I was joking with some friends and say, no, don't get mad at me for this. Okay. This is my humor. I said, why don't we swap Alberta for Maine? Right? Like give Maine. They got nice people, nice lobsters, you know, but I was trying to say, you know, if you're gonna make a deal, heck, give them Seattle.
Yeah, don't take Seattle.
Boeing can't get a spaceship into orbit anyway. It's not like, you know, all that DEI hiring. Let's give it to Canada.
Yeah.
But
I'm joking all the way to Portland. They could have all that.
Like no, but I mean, I'm joking, but I'm also saying, like, why don't we think outside the box a little bit and think about win-win? Like, because Alberta's, you know, the people, not necessarily like Edmonton and Calgary, because that's kind of like Austin, Texas, right? It's this little island of blue and red in a state of red, but you know, the people are very American in thinking. Now, some of them would be horribly offended at that, and they shouldn't be, because I mean it as a compliment. But the people there, the problem is that the Canadian government, with all this net zero and this Carney guy, he's not going to let them harvest the resources. He's going to keep Alberta in poverty. And America wants Alberta because Alberta has one of the youngest per capita states or provinces in North America. So Alberta and Saskatchewan are very valuable in the United States. And I think if the United States can negotiate and even trade some territory, if necessary, we should connect Alaska to the main. There's no reason why not to. The concern would be British Columbia. British Columbia, you know, it's funny, if any of you live, I don't know if you have, like, put it in the comments, if you lived in Portland or like Oregon or Washington or British Columbia, you know, it's kind of neat. There's always this myth that they're going to create their own country called Cascadia. So some of you, if you've ever lived out there, you know that that's what they actually want. And it's funny because Eastern Washington State and Eastern Oregon State are very red. They're very Republican. And it's you know, it's sort of the coastal layer that kind of lean left. And I don't see why we have to hate one another, right? Like I think there's something to be said. You know, if I could get rid of every Marxist and send them to British Columbia or Washington, I think that's a net win, folks. I don't, you know, I'm so blessed where I am now. I grew up my whole life being the only conservative in my town, kind of thing, like less than 5% kind of thing. And to live where I live now, like to find a liberal is the exception. And I'm like, it's just so weird that I come to this in late middle age. All right.
So Tina messages that she Googled on labels, cricket flour or powder made from ground crickets is a sustainable protein-rich ingredient, gaining traction in the food industry. Yeah, not among eaters. 7 brands pioneering its use include, let me see, 7 brands. 7 brands. No, I'm sorry.
Put
7 brands
again.
pioneering its use include Biddy Foods, Chapel, Chirps, Chips, Exo, Cricket Flowers, All Things Bugs, and Entimo Farms. And
so make sure you make all your lefty friends eat the bugs.
That's right.
I'm a big fan that anything they want to impose on us, we impose on them. So if John Kerry wants to go over with his private jet, but he doesn't want us to have airplane tickets, I think he should have to know, you know, he should have to go in the economy class and the airline.
Spirit Airlines. Yeah, enjoy Spirit Airlines economy.
They don't want us to. Yeah, exactly. They don't want to, and it has to be on a Boeing, okay, with DEI manufacturer. And you know, and that's we've got to start. Like, I want to see the people rise up, the baptized rise up, right? Not in a
Yeah.
violent way. I want them to rise up primarily in prayer, but organize and start thinking a little bit more clever. Like every one of you has subject matter expertise in an area, okay? And if you're 50 or older, you should be adopting nephews and nieces. Because you know what? Sometimes your kids won't even listen to you, but sometimes your best friend's kid will. You have these adopted nephews and nieces. Maybe it's a neighbor's kid, maybe whatever. But what I'm saying is take your expertise. If you find a receptive young person and mentor them, okay? That's one of the most powerful things you can do. And there are 3 areas you want to help them with, right? There's the physical, in the sense of just the regular day-to-day stuff. There's the psychological, how they manage relationships and decisions, and how do they mature, and the spiritual. So some of you are more spiritual than others, but again, you can give them an example. And I'll tell you, just spending time with someone and trying to teach them stuff, it's a very rewarding thing. It's so important. So all the good people, I want you to be mentoring these kids. They got to be your future DAs, your future congressmen, your future police officers, your future military people, your future nurses, and all the different professions. Because and we have to instill the values that our grandparents and great grandparents had, because now everything's inversed. Okay, you got police who used to be protectors being oppressors. You've got nurses who used to be healers putting people to sleep. You've got priests who used to be spiritual and holy men, engaging in the most horrendous things that are right out of a demonic novel. You've got politicians who take an oath to serve the Constitution and the people, and who breach that, who make a salary of like $200,000 a year, but somehow end up with a net worth of 70 million. Even the lefties, they end up with tens of millions of dollars in net worth, which is mathematically not possible without some sort of grift.
Right.
So, and it's not just one of them, and it's not just one party, by the way.
But you know what,
Okay.
Father, to your point, what you were just saying is like, yes, people do need to step up and mentor, because guess what? They're being mentored right now, and and you don't know by who. Especially if if you are in California, or you're in some of these, maybe not even so. I mean, it looks like these things are dying, but certain schools, public schools, you get like these weirdo teachers. He said they're trying to come at them with the physical, with the mental, and with the emotional, right? Or right. And
mentorship is so
spiritual,
important.
Sorry, the spiritual.
And if you have children, allow your children trusted adults. Like, if you have a best friend, or you have a couple friends that are close to you, adult friends that your children know, then hopefully you've already sort of evolved into adopted uncles and aunts. Your adopted your friends can teach your kids things that you can't teach, and your kids will approach them. Don't be jealous of this. Your kids will approach them with things they don't want to approach with you. And it's not that they don't love you or don't trust you. They just don't want to worry you, or maybe they just don't want, they don't want to hear "I told you so." So, I was the beneficiary of some very excellent mentors, and my dad was not jealous of these mentors at all. He encouraged it. And so, it was very important to me. And I hope that maybe you can provide that, because I want to see, when there's a DA election, you got 8 great candidates, 8 people of faith, 8 people who actually love their country and their communities. And then we don't have to worry. It doesn't matter who wins, right? If we got 8 good candidates, we don't care. That's what we want with our elections for congressmen and presidents. We don't want one good candidate in the fight against good and evil. I mean, that's great. It's a great movie. It's great. St. George against the Dragon, right? But ultimately, we know our society is healthy when we have people that you have 2 good people, and the differences are things like, should union membership be mandatory or not? Like, I mean, that kind of thing. It shouldn't be, can we kill granny and can we kill babies?
Right.
But that's not where you want the national discussion to be. And this notion of, running these deficit, I mean, you have to realize it's thievery of future generations. And our society right now does not care, because it does not have children. So that's something. There was an article that I saw that said that it was it's improved because Meloni in Italy won. But before she won her election, and Geert Wilders won in the Netherlands, it was like there was like one leader of a European country that had children. And that's not to make any of you feel bad if you've never had children, right? Because I mean, it doesn't always work out in life. But what I'm trying to get at is, if you have the norm that the leaders don't have children, guess what? They don't think about the future of children. That's not their priority. It makes sense. It's a back of brain thing, right? So
Yeah.
they're not thinking in terms of future generations. And especially if they've been programmed with this nonsense that you should have a population of 500 million on the planet. They want the suffering and the attrition of humans, right? So maybe not in the front of their brain, but in the back of their brain. And they want these wars. They want these diseases. They say they don't. They say they're going to protect us. That's not true. All these people run around and say, we're going to fight for democracy. You guys don't believe in democracy. You annulled the Romanian election. Don't even start. You guys are so full of bleeping. No wonder Donald Trump has truth on his license plate, because we've had it. You want to make your case that you just want to make the world into some sort of death cult, then fine. That's your case, and we're going to disagree with you openly. You want to have us eat crickets in our hot dogs and our McDonald's hamburger or something stupid, which is what they want to do. Hopefully it's not in the fast food yet.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to do it, great. You do it. But we have the choice not to do it. You want to believe that all religions are the same and that, we're going to just hug everybody that's different than us. That's wonderful. But we have constitutional rights of free association and to choose the religion of our ancestors. And if you choose the religion of your ancestors, guess what? Open up your Bible, and you know what you learn about your God if you're Christian? Your God is a jealous God. What does that mean? He does not accept all these watering down, right? So that's why I would far rather sit down and have a coffee with a Baptist who disagrees with me on theological points, or even a Muslim who doesn't even share my God. And I get flame for that, saying that, but that's true. And we sit and we can agree to disagree, but I'd much rather that than someone who says they share my religion and they don't believe in anything that St. Thomas Aquinas would believe, or St. Jerome would believe, or St. Athanasius would believe. It's like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
Right?
No, and their only comeback is always, well, Jesus wouldn't be so judgmental, or they'll say some real hippy dippy like that, and you just
have they read the gospel?
Yeah.
Our Lord is pretty mean, and a lot of times, right? Like seriously, to sit and read it without the cartoon vision of our Lord, or the bobblehead version of our Lord.
The overturning
He's pretty darn blunt.
When we get to the overturning of tables at the temple,
he makes a whip of cords and physically beats people.
Okay, all right. So
right?
we need
when you guys ask Felix, what would our Lord Jesus do? Sometimes it's to make a whip of cords and beat the stuffing out of the person in front of you, right? So that's an inconvenient truth. Here's another inconvenient truth. If you do not have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one.
Wait, so all right. So I look, a little off topic, but are we saying here that Jesus probably, right? Is it in the discussion that he was like getting into a fist fight in this situation, or that he physically
beat people?
These multiple people. This is what's crazy, because it's just
not only that,
right?
Not only him just like whacking someone, like you swat a friend or something like that, or you might give someone a little shove.
Yeah.
No, he made a whip. He injured people. So the thing is, you got to realize that is actually a very good image for you to reflect on, right? I was talking to somebody earlier today, and that's going through a very rough time, and I was so impressed with this person's maturity. Like, they're a young person, relatively young person. I was so impressed with their maturity. A lot of bad things happened to them because of bad decisions, and they took it very maturely. And they said, God allows these sufferings because he loves me and he's teaching me. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my goodness, how do I stuff you in a photocopy?
Yeah, I know,
right? But it's one of the hardest things that a priest or any clergy person has to deal with, is all these people thinking, well, God doesn't love me because I've got some suffering. I must have been. No, you know what? God chastises those whom he loves. This is an old Christian concept shared across a bunch of denominations. This isn't just a Catholic thing. And I got to tell you, you've got to take suffering in the right context, right? The thing is that suffering can also now, not all suffering. Like if I'm driving,
right.
okay, I drive 80 miles an hour. I don't do this, by the way, but let's say I drove 80 miles an hour in a 50 zone and the lights come on behind me and it's like I get a ticket, right?
Right.
I can't say, Lord, I offer this suffering for, it's like, okay, that's a self-inflicted injury. I sinned. I broke a law. By the way, some of you don't know this. If you break a legitimate secular law, it's a sin because you have to submit to legitimate authority, right? So that does not mean every secular law is a legitimate law, but that's another rabbit hole. But something like a speeding law is. So the thing is that, you get a speeding ticket. You deliberately sped. Now, I'm not talking about you accidentally sped, but if you deliberately sped, that's at least a venial sin for your confession.
Maybe it's up for discussion. I don't know. Maybe not the speed laws. Maybe there is an argument for speed laws, but even then, I don't know. I'm open to hearing other arguments because there are places that don't need these speed restrictions, and also like the seatbelt law. All right, the seatbelt law is just a big money cash grab, in my opinion.
Well, it's you know what, Felix and I get along so well because we both like to open up a million rabbit holes, and I don't want to get too far from the thumbnail because people are going to accuse me of clickbait. So just to finish on this, no, it's all right. It's a good topic. No, but the thing is that here's the choice. So on the thumbnail you see A or B, right?
Yeah.
And that's the choice. So the choice is, do we open the borders and make everything sort of a globalist society where we welcome everybody? And in fact, the problem, like, I don't know if you guys follow British news at all, but they have a 2-tier justice system. If you're a Christian, you have one set of rules. If you're non-Christian and a newcomer, you have another set of rules, sentencing guidelines, imprisonments, everything. Yeah. It's a 2-tier judgment system. It's racist and it's unjust, and it is what it is. I mean, the poor people are powerless. I don't, and they disarmed the British people, right? So there's not like there's any easy way for them to sort it out. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I follow a couple different channels of British veterans who are now retired, and they're looking at this, and it's like they're in agreement with me. We went through 2 world wars to fight for freedom, and now we're arresting pensioners for mean Facebook tweets or Facebook posts and tweets, and we're early releasing rapists and murderers because they're of a different culture and they didn't know that murder was wrong. Like, listen,
I saw one of a veteran crying. He was crying. He was like, "I can't believe this is what I fought for. This was a big mistake. I lost friends for this."
We have allowed the West, all right. Like America is the West's last stand. We have allowed all the countries outside of America, and maybe Hungary, and maybe Poland, and maybe parts of Italy, and maybe parts of the Netherlands. There's exceptions that prove the rule, but the West in general has become worse and more oppressive to its people than the very evil we fought in the 40s, and much more evil. So they literally have the ovens too, but they actually, you can't make this stuff up. I know as soon as I say it, I'm going to have people go, fake news, not true. Fact check me. It is true. They actually use, I have to be careful what I say because of our hosts online, the medical waste from certain procedures for people who don't like large families. They actually use the biomaterial to power electrical generators. And there was a big scandal in Oregon. If you want to look up a news article on it, just look at, put those words in there that I can't say, but look it up. It was in Oregon.
Ritual,
they were what it is. Yeah, they were actually shipping the medical waste from Vancouver, Canada to Portland, and then there was a generator that would use this, and it would make electricity on the basis of, like, how. Listen, guys, I don't know if any of Father Rippinger, and I'm not a friend, or I admire him, but I don't know him.
Right, same here.
But here's the thing, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but if I was sitting with him and I asked, and I said, hey, is there anything more demonic or what more permission we could give us as a society to just let demons run loose. That's pretty well it. I mean, and this is the problem. This is what I was very long meander to get to, that the choice is point A or point B. We either go back to the religion of the old Christianity, the pre-1960s Christianity, or we embrace this globalism. It's really only two choices. There are probably 40 choices, but there's only two viable choices. Option A, option B. If we go with the globalists, I believe that God will send the world a chastisement. He probably will anyway. There'll be earthquakes, there'll be volcanoes blowing, there'll be crazy stuff. We're getting it now.
Wow.
But I mean, it's not about Chicken Little and the sky's falling. The chastisements come because of our choices. And and Canadians are angry at me for telling it like it is with how they're dealing with their future. But the fact of the matter is, they too, they want to blame Trump. Everybody likes to blame Trump. Listen, doesn't matter whether you love Trump or hate Trump. The fact of the matter is, he didn't cause their low fertility rate. He didn't import half of the Middle East into the country. He didn't, I mean, there's all these things. And then there's that Canadians themselves have done. And then now they and Europe are dealing with a real crisis. They've got cultural problems. They've got 592 places of worship burned in 12 years. The mosques are full, the churches are empty. What if the Christians are right? Like, if the Muslims are right, then this is a good thing, right? But if the Christians are right, this is a bad thing. And God's going to have action. And then the problem is that the modern churches say, well, we all believe in the same thing. We've got Cardinal Dolan and Pope Francis in the past, and a number of others that openly have been celebrating this thing like Catholic Muslim Lent. What is that? That's not a thing. That's not of God, right? First of all, if I'm just an external observer, I would say Catholic Muslim Lent is insulting to Muslims, and it's insulting to Catholics who actually believe.
Right.
So there's no reason why you can't be friends with Muslims, and Muslims can't be friends with Christians. Of course you can be friends, but you agree to disagree. And that comes back to Tina's remark about, Trump's chosen license plate. True.
Muslims outright deny the crucifixion. They don't even think it was Jesus, right? They believe it was Judas, that Judas took Jesus' place on the cross. That seems to be the Muslim theory.
I didn't know that they thought Judas, but I will say this: I do know they don't think he died on the cross. No, right. It might be, right? But here's the thing: the main problem, okay, the main problem why the two faiths you can't really argue they have the same God. And I use this, and I apologize if you've heard this one before. Okay, so right here is a little bit of Guinness. Unfortunately, it's only a little bit of Guinness. Now, if I put a drop of water in there, and I say, I show it to you without the drop of water, and I say, Felix, this is a little bit of Guinness. And then I show you, and I say, I take tap water or bottled water, or whatever, and I take an eyedropper and I drop one drop of water in this Guinness. And I say, Felix, what is this? And I'll ask you, Felix, what is it?
It's still beer.
It's still Guinness.
Beer, baby.
There's nothing that has changed in the nature of the Guinness. Now let's look at what we call accidents. So what are accidents? Accidents are like the foam, the color, whether you can see through it, right? So none of these things change the nature that it's Guinness. If you could sort of see through it, you'd be saying, oh, did you leave it out too long or whatever, right? But I mean, you wouldn't, you'd be curious, but it wouldn't change the nature. So if, however, I take a drop of poison, I take a drop of arsenic, and I drop it in this thing of Guinness, what is it?
It's poison.
It's poison. It changed the nature, right? And so we're not used to thinking like that. And so the problem is that if you have friends, and I have acquaintances, well, you could even say friends who are Islam, who follow Islam, right. And we agree to disagree. That's why we're friends.
Mm-hmm.
But they consider Christians polytheists. Don't get offended at it if you're Christian. You agree to disagree.
Yeah.
Now, our job as Catholics or any kind of Christian, any kind of baptized person, is to bear the light of the gospel. Now, if someone rejects it, hey, you're not accountable for how many you believe. You're accountable for bearing the light, right? So if they know what Christians believe, you've done your job. So if they fight with you and they say that our Lord was just a prophet, then just say, well, that's not the Catholic understanding. Just keep repeating that, or that's not the Christian understanding, or whatever. And then when they and you know what I would suggest you do? You say, I would love to listen to your perspective on how you understand Jesus and our Blessed Mother Mary. Let them tell their story, and then when they're done, this is a good litmus test. I'm giving you an arrow for your quiver. When they're done, you let them share first, and then say, that was very interesting. I didn't know, and then give them an honest compliment. Never lie. Never give false compliments. If you say, I didn't know this, I didn't know this. So a lot of Christians don't know that Islam honors Mary, the mother of our Lord.
Honor Mary. Yeah, well,
right? So give them honest compliment, something you didn't know. And then you say, can I share what we believe? And almost everyone will let you say your piece. So you just say a very simple piece, that the eternal Logos, that God, who is outside of time itself, entered our space-time in the second person of the Trinity. The Word was made flesh, where God himself, a divine person, received the name Jesus, at which every knee shall bend, and no one shall attain salvation apart from him. This divine person had a fully divine nature, but also a fully human nature. So we could say he's true God and true man. He will come again to judge the living and the dead and the world by fire. And you drop that little bomb on him, and if your Muslim friend is respectful, they'll just say, well, we see things differently. And you carry on being friends, and you talk about football, or you talk about whatever else you talk about. But you've done your duty. Now, do you know that description that I just gave would offend many so-called liberal Christians? So you see in that, it's true. Yeah, it's
that's
true.
So sad. Yeah.
And so that's why I say it's about people of goodwill, because your good Muslim friend will agree to disagree, but your liberal Christian will freak. They'll sprout blue hair. They'll do all kinds of crazy, but they're not.
They'll scream and shout, and they'll call you the worst things and call you not Christian. I think that's really where it goes off the rails.
Well,
Christ-like.
So I encourage, and we will get back to the choice A and B in a sec, folks. But because I've got something exciting for you. Well, you may not think so, but I hope you do. I'm going to give you the two choices from two perspectives. One is the Schwab Soros perspective, and the other one is Leo the 13th. All right, so we're going to talk about those two choices from these two. I think they're representative of each side. We're going to let them make their case. I'm going to read both cases. But before we get to that, I just wanted to say that, if you plant the seed of truth in the heart of somebody with the gospel, the Holy Ghost does the rest. You don't have to worry about it. It's not our job to convince people. It's our job to invite them, to remind them that they have an opportunity to have eternal life and a place prepared for them from before time itself existed, and that every person has that universal invitation. The problem is that the postmodern churches teach that there's universal salvation. There's not. Everyone has universal invitation to the true faith. They do not have universal salvation. You can't just choose whatever. I can't choose that I believe in the spaghetti monster as a god or Zeus and expect salvation. And basically the rule of thumb for how Catholics and other Christians process this is that we're judged by what we do with what we've been given. So if you live on a desert island and you've never heard the gospel, then God's not going to obviously judge you by that. But if you do get into heaven, it's still by the blood of the cross.
Right.
And so, in other words, you would accept our Lord if you knew him, right? Just like the demons and angels, shortly after the creation, they picked one side or another. This is what our civilization has to pick, choice A or choice B. So, Felix, I'm going to read. Actually, I don't know if you have anything to say before I do, but I was going to read. I'm going to put myself in character. You know,
Okay.
you guys ever see this? This is a fun thing. This is a really fun thing. And, I'm kicking myself I didn't have the B-roll for it. If you Google lawyer got turned into a cat, all right, there's a very viral video. It's hilarious. I had tears coming out of my eyes. What happened was during COVID, a whole bunch of courts started doing their hearings over Zoom. And there was a lawyer, he let his little daughter use his computer, and the daughter put a filter or a mask or whatever of a cat. And so the lawyer was talking to the judge, and it's a cat talking to the judge, right? And he's like, he was very embarrassed. He was like, Your Honor, I'm obviously not a cat, and I can't turn this off. And everybody was just like losing it, right? And so the judge just let him continue. But it's the funniest thing. So if you Google that, just say lawyer turned into cat on Zoom or something like that, it should come up, because it's really funny. And I feel bad for the poor guy. But
in the video settings.
Are you looking for it? Oh yeah, there it is. There it is. Okay. Yeah.
Can you hear me, Judge?
I can hear you. I think it's a filter.
It is, and I don't know how to remove it. I've got my assistant here. She's trying to, but I'm prepared to go forward with it. I'm here live. I'm not a cat.
That's what does it. I'm not a cat. I'm so glad he cleared that up.
I love it. I love it, Felix.
I think if you click the up.
Yeah. We don't have to do the tech support, but that's just it. So when I first saw that, guys, I mean, everybody was shut up during the plague there. And yeah. I had tears out of my eyes laughing so hard. It was funny. And because you could see it happening. And so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put myself, what I did is I prepared 2 little scripts, and I'm going to put myself in. I don't know if you know who Schwab is. He's the head of the World Economic Gathering in Davos. I gotta burn it out. So anyway, so there's him, and so the what I call the WEF path. And so I'm going to give you that spiel, and then I'm going to give you the spiel of Leo the 13th. So even if you're not a Catholic, I think you'll find it interesting, because I believe that, like, one of the things I love, like, if I encounter other traditional Catholics, it's great. It's, we already share the same faith. But you know what I really love is when I meet other Christians who aren't Catholic, and I introduce them to some of these characters they never heard of, like Leo the 13th, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, this guy is so awesome," right? And he just has good ideas. And so, our differences in theology aside, it's just so neat to share something. It reminds you that there's a whole bunch of us on the same team, right? The world is going to split into these 2 teams. So this is why I want you to pay attention to it. And there are other people I could have used about Leo, and there are other people I could have used, except Klaus. But I think they're just so representative of it. So let me give you the first path. So this is the Klaus path. Okay. And if I had a filter, I'd put my Klaus filter on, and I'd be talking like I'm a character on Hogan's Heroes, but I can't really do it. All right. So global transformation, right? So imagine they're going to pitch this global transformation of strategic vision. So they would say, we're not witnessing a crisis, but a profound transformation of human civilization. That the opportunities of the chips that we could get, the transhumanism, could improve the human species, that we could evolve, take control of the evolution of the human species. That we have to realize that the obsolescence of nation states, there's no more need for America or Canada or Belgium. These are all old concepts that we don't have to worry about anymore. The rhetoric we hear from President Trump and people like Bishop Meikle are the last gasp of a dying paradigm. Nation states are 19th century constructs rapidly becoming irrelevant in a deeply interconnected global ecosystem. So here are 3 key observations. Borders are technological artifacts, so they should be removed. No borders. Human capital is the true global currency. Migration is not a problem, it's a solution. So they are planning on a great reconfiguration. They are engineering I'm going to put myself in character. We are engineering a fundamental redesign of human social organization. We are promising, remember, President Obama, he is going to transform, right? Transformation. The demographic shifts are not accidents. Population movement is strategic mechanism, and cultural hybridization, in other words, all cultures can mix together, are our primary tool of global integration. They propose a four-dimensional chessboard. First, economic restructuring. Migratory patterns solve labor market inefficiency, younger populations offset aging demographics, and global talent pools replace national workforce constraints. Second, technological. Digital identity systems transcend traditional documentation. Blockchain and AI will manage human mobility, identity, finance, have all control. Citizenship becomes networked, fluid concept. Your bank account can be turned on or off depending on your social credit score. Google social credit score if you're watching here. Monocultures are evolutionary dead ends. So, in other words, no more Americans, no more Canadians, no more Belgians, no more Scottish people. Monocultures are evolutionary dead ends. They promise Star Trek, but they're going to give you Blade Runner and
We
AI.
got to be all Earthlings. That's it. We're
Right.
all Earthlings.
Diversity is a computational complexity for societal problem solving. I don't know. The last time I saw it in action, I saw a Delta airplane upside down on the runway of Toronto. But
Hey.
teach his own. Cultural friction generates innovation. Really? Yes, I love cultural friction. Don't you, Felix? Like
Right.
what about the cultural? What about the cultural friction that we enjoy in the streets of Paris and London and Telford? Governance reimagined. Representative democracy is outdated operating system. I want to repeat this. They might be right. But think about this. This is profound. This is one of these things that people can let go in one ear out the other. I want you to listen to this carefully. This is what they say. Representative democracy is an outdated operating system. You will own nothing and be happy. You will eat the crickets.
That's right.
You eat the crickets, peasants.
Sleep in the pods.
You don't need a vote. And we will vote as we tell you through the media. We will vote as you tell us through all the different social media, the search engines, the social media. We will nudge and nudge and nudge you so you all think like us. Google, my dear friends, the following phrase: the Dutch tulip craze.
While you look that up, how about let me see this. Did you know what I heard about today? Apparently there's these things called dark factories.
I haven't heard of this.
So China has the apparently has this leap on AI. And what's going on now is that they have these AI robots basically building other AI robots, and they're working in factories. Right. In the dark, they don't need the light because they're familiar with the layout. So they're just in there, just straight up, just working in there. And so again, this is where it comes down to, where they talk about population control. When they can replace the workforce with $2 an hour robots, they're what are you going to do with all these unemployed people? I think you answered that.
Yeah, well, we're gonna get to that. So I'm gonna give you two things. I want you guys to look up Dutch tulip craze, okay? Because what that is an example of when a whole nation went nuts. All right, and that's what sort of is happening right now. I want you to understand that what's happening right now is there's a mass psychosis that much of the people in the Western world are under the thrall of a type of psychological oppression. Now, some of you are C.S. Lewis fans, so if you read C.S. Lewis, and if you don't, I encourage you to do. So there's a book called The Great Divorce. It's a great story about heaven, hell, and purgatory. Don't leave it on your coffee table if you're married, though, because people are going to be thinking that you want to get rid of your partner. But The Great Divorce, okay, that's a good book. But the other one that I want you to look at is, and you can get it in one volume on Kindle fairly cheaply, The Chronicles of Narnia. Now, it's a kid's book, okay? but I'm going to tell you, it's well worth your time. I want you to read it as sort of a spirit, like a junk food, like a mental junk food.
Mm-hmm.
So the best thing is if you have grandchildren or nephew or niece, read them the story aloud. But here's something else. You might want to try it. You can do it with, if you're married, do it with your partner. Take turns reading to one another. I know it sounds silly, but I'm going to tell you, it's just something. It's an activity you can do together, and you can, for some people that they'd like that. Anyway, so even if it's children's book, I'll tell you why. And if your partner gives you a hard time, why are you reading me something that should be for like an 8-year-old? The reason is because it's allegorical and it teaches you a whole pile of crap. You can learn in that fiction so many concepts that would take you like 30 books to read. All right. So Lewis is a genius. And there's in book 6, there's a story of a witch that has all these followers under her thrall of misinformation. They're a haze. They're under her spell. And it takes one. It's a Marshwiggle in the story, but I'm sure if we ever depict a Marshwiggle again, it'll have a Trump haircut. He sticks his foot in the fire, and the smell is so bad, everybody wakes up. And the thing is that that's it. It's about the quest for truth. And then the last book is about the story of the end of the world. And if you read these, even though they're allegories, if anyone ever wants to talk to me about Lord of the World or Chronicles of Narnia with regard to how it sees the human civilization wrap up, then that's a discussion I'd love to have. And if you really want to show on it or whatever, we can do it as well. But anyway, I want you to listen to this again. This is right from the websites of people friendly to this type of thinking. Okay, I want you to listen to this again because this is really important. You got to understand what we're going up against. Like, if you guys got Canadian friends, oh my goodness, pray for them, please. They have no idea. God love these poor people. They all think that I'm just some sort of like Trump sycophant, which I'm not, or they think that I'm just brainwashed into America or like this kind of thing. No, the poor Canadians have no idea what they just made their prime minister and this Carney guy. Okay, Carney is an operative of the World Economic Forum. This is what they believe. I said the darn word. World Economic Gathering. Sorry, YouTube. Okay.
World Money Group.
Let me tell you this. You think about the consequences of this, okay? Representative democracy is an outdated operating system. Stakeholder governance, in other words, corporations and NGOs, will replace electoral models. Do you see why they took over the churches? Because they get to be one of the stakeholders, but they work as puppets. Expert networks will guide policy, not populist impulses. Do you know what a populist impulse is? It's you. It's you and me. Anybody watching this has got a populist impulse, okay? Because the rest of you would have tuned out long ago. In other words, what we're saying is, there's this beautiful hymn. I'm friends with a lot of priests in the Novus Ordo. So for non-Catholics, you won't know what that is. That's basically the modern Catholic Church. I'm a traditional, but the thing is, I'm friends with almost all my priest friends outside of my own jurisdiction are Novus Ordo. They're new type priests, and we agree to disagree on some stuff. But anyway, I go to one guy's who is he celebrates the traditional mass, but he's still under the Novus Ordo government, and I go to one of his prayer groups. And we might have one of the other attendees here, but he's probably asleep now because we're running late. But anyway, there's this hymn they sing, "Rise up, ye men of God," right? And you can Google that too, the lyrics for that hymn, the hymn, "Rise up, ye men of God." My goodness, it was a Protestant author. What a profound, amazing hymn as a rally cry. But anyway, for even people that aren't overly religious, this is something I want you to realize is we can't allow these so-called elites to drive us into the sheep pen for slaughter. We cannot. It is unholy. It is wrong. It is immoral. Anything that smacks of the left is of Lucifer. Tell us how you really feel, Bishop Meikle, right? But anyway,
no sugarcoat it.
So the strategic vision, they believe we are not destroying cultures, we are creating a new global culture. Some of you know the name Taylor Marshall. He did a very interesting YouTube video on Salve et coagula. What does that mean? So you dissolve and you reform. All right. That is the motto that's under the very famous androgynous Satan statue, like with the goat head and the female mammary glands, but the male appendage. And it's like, and that symbol of the devil, the motto that appears under that statue most of the time is salve et coagula. And that's what they're trying to do. We are not destroying cultures. We are creating a new global culture. For fun, Google the video of the ritual at CERN when they opened CERN. All right. And actually, while I continue on this, Felix, see if you can pull that up off on the soft side there. Okay. You know which one I mean, eh?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So Felix is going to show you something. You guys are going to have like an eye opener here. You're going to be like, what the heck? Okay. So here's the deal. So I'm going to finish up with this school of thought. The nation state is a historical parenthesis. We are closing that parenthesis. Humanity's next chapter is being written now, and we, the elite, are its authors. Resistance is not just futile, it is mathematically irrelevant. The Borg, folks, it's the Borg. And the mainstream Catholic Church, Google this, Abrahamic family house. It's 3 Borg cubes. One is Islam, one is Judaism, one is named, the only church in 2,000 years named after a living Catholic or someone who at least self-identifies as one is Francis. The Francis Church. You can't make this stuff up. Now, here's my notes. Let me share with you something a little more hopeful. Something that I hope will resonate. Something that is from a different time, and that's Leo the 13th. Now, before I start, okay, Felix, you play the closing. This is the closing event for what we're dealing with here.
This is from the Daily Mail. These are just regular clips, but
yeah, just let her loose. Let's see it. Oh, you're on the wrong screen there, buddy.
Oh, come on. What's going on here?
Yep, there you go. You can't make this stuff up, folks.
They might show only the tame stuff on this. Oh, no, I guess not. First off, that's just bizarre.
Oh, it gets better.
Yeah.
I mean, here it's just flaky, right?
What? Then there's the portal to hell. Okay, all right. And
yep. There you go.
guys, come on. I mean,
don't they have a statue of Baal or something that comes out at some point?
Yeah, well, I think there's one at the entrance at one of them.
Yeah, there's a big statue of the god at Baal, right?
Look at this
and there's
one.
all these people like it's just weird. There we go. There's one, but there's the goat. But you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah. They claim that thing is going to defeat God somehow. Enjoy that.
That's right, folks. This is what we're fighting. We're fighting a spiritual warfare. And some of you guys, like, you know what? I get a criticism all the time. They're like, Mikkel, you talk about politics. Look at the eyes here, folks.
Yeah. This is Daily Mail. This is...
Yep. And I say to them, listen, you know, this is a spiritual warfare manifesting in this realm.
And let me tell you, this really is the tame version. This is like a 2 or 3 hour event, and it's really weird. There's parts that take place, I think, in the tunnel. Look at this. All right.
Yeah.
Have we seen enough?
Okay, I think we have. Okay, folks. So I'm going to give you some hope. Let me close with some hope. Okay, so here is on the sovereign reign of Christ in the eras of modern globalism. This is a response. I'm channeling Leo the 13th. Is his not in a bad way, but in a good way. I'm trying to write a response in his mind. He's my favorite pope. Of 2,000 years of popes, no one is more beloved to me than Leo the 13th. And I have a first class relic of St. Pius X, who was also a great pope. But to me, Leo the 13th is probably the holiest pope. He's not even named a saint, but I think, that in a certain sense is an injustice, or at least a humility, that one of the holiest popes we have was never sainted. So, on the sovereign reign of Christ and the errors of modern globalism. The modern globalist vision represents the most profound theological error of our age. The attempt to construct a universal human order without reference to Christ the King. The contrasting visions that the globalist model sees humanity as an economic and technological system. Catholic social teaching, in contrast, is humanity as a mystical body under divine providence. Thy will be done. You remember the Lord's Prayer? By the way, do you know the Vatican wants to change that? You can't make this stuff up.
Yeah, that's
right?
insane.
It hasn't trickled down yet, but they're changing it.
What's the change?
Imagine the audacity and the arrogance. The one prayer that our Lord Jesus, second person of the Holy Trinity, true God and true man, gave us, word for word. They want to change it? What, after 2,000 years? Well, we were wrong for 2,000 years? These idiots. Like, seriously,
Yeah.
They're so lucky we don't have the stake, and they're so lucky they don't have me near a blessed millstone and a fishing boat, but we won't go there. The nation state, a provisional, not ultimate reality. So Leo would give the nation state some criticism, like the modern notion of nation state, but not at the expense of the human dignity. So he says the nation state is neither absolute nor obsolete, but a legitimate expression of human social nature. It's rooted in natural law. So if you guys don't know what natural law is, there's some spiritual homework for you. I want you to look up natural law, because natural law is our bridge with all the non-believers, right? Like our friends who are Stoics, they're like experts in natural law. A lot of it. Like there's a renewed interest in Stoicism. People are rejecting formal religion because they go to a Catholic church and they see ukuleles and monkeys on trapeze. They're like saying, this isn't true.
There's something wrong. So right.
They haven't discovered traditional Catholicism. We're sort of a fringe movement, for lack of a better term, in terms of numbers. But because they can't find sane Christianity, a lot of people have been driven to Stoicism. And other things like that. So it's rooted, the nation state is rooted in natural law. It's ordered towards the common good. It's subject to divine and not merely human authority. So the first commandment, see, this is what the devil was so clever. Post 1960s Christianity has got everybody to forget the first commandment. It's all about what makes humans comfortable. That makes us feel like a family. It makes us feel that we can help one another. And we exclude the first commandment to give God the honor that he's due. And Tina's absolutely right. The objective of our adversary is to open up a portal to hell. You know, sometimes they hint stuff through like fiction and right in front of your face. I got a kick out of the old Ghostbusters movie, which was just a comedy, right? But opening up the gate to hell, and then, of course, it had to come through a beer fridge.
Yeah,
I'm not impressed with that.
Hey, I know, right? But so yeah, no, Ghostbusters definitely touched on that. But what was the
There's
thing
a Fifth
is,
Element or something? There's a bunch of them.
Oh no, yeah, they always. Oh yeah, but I think my point was with the CERN people is that they legitimately believe this. And again, it's like we just also had a discussion about how baby parts are being harvested for
all kinds of stuff.
Let me paint a picture. You walk into an old bookstore and you pick up an old demonic spell book, right? And then you open it up in the middle and you just start reading off like the steps of the ritual. There's going to be one in there that's going to say harvest baby parts for energy.
Yeah, basically.
You understand what I'm saying?
So a lot of people don't realize this. Even if you don't believe in this, people do,
Yeah.
right? Like they actually will implant, they will work for these clinics and to invoke this old stuff.
Yeah.
And just because you don't believe in it, you just think it's a bunch of myth, doesn't mean it's not true. It just means you don't believe in it. So
And
whether, you know,
and you're still going through the motions, you're still participating in the ritual, you know, especially if you're partaking in that activity. Just because you don't believe you don't believe it. Again, like, what was the flip side? If we go on the holy side of this, that there were priests that would doubt the presence in the
Right.
Eucharist, and,
Right.
and guess
and
what?
God
You
will
know,
allow a miracle. Yeah, no,
right?
there's all kinds of stuff. And so again, you know, Felix and I are both kings of the rabbit hole, but there's a lot,
I'm
yeah,
so
there's a lot to
sorry.
unpack there. No, don't be sorry. This is good because people can, you're inspiring them to research on their own too, right? So let's look at the theological critique of globalist ideology. Hey,
Go,
Dale.
Dale.
Oh, you are still here, Dale, and you know who I'm referring to.
That's
Was
right.
Rise Up, You Man of God. So Dale and I both sing that together on occasion, once a month. But anyway, so fundamental theological errors. So this is the theological critique of globalist ideology. The materialistic reductionism. Okay, so it reduces human people to economic units. It denies the spiritual dimension of human society. It treats it like an optional, you know, if you want to go to church on Sunday, that's fine, but it's not real. Replaces divine providence with technocratic management. There's a false universalism, and this is in postmodern Christianity too. You can see it in the way that adults are buried. They bury them in white, the same way they celebrate saints, right? So that's an indication that they've lost the moorings from their ancient faith. The false universalism seeks universal unity through technological and economic means, destroys organic unity found in Christ, destroys legitimate cultural and social distinctions. Revolutionary internationalism. Many of you might even know this. Justin Trudeau, former Prime Minister of Canada, said that Canada was post-national. So this is what we see as an example of revolutionary internationalism. It's the attempt to create a human order without reference to the divine order. It mirrors the errors of socialist internationalism and represents a secular parody of the church's universal mission. The Catholic alternative, or you can say conservative Christian alternative, is universal yet particular. So the principles of authentic human solidarity. So this is what Leo would say. He'd say there's a respect for national sovereignty. There's a preservation of cultural particularity. It's okay that Belgians have great waffles and Scottish people have great beer. Subsidiarity is a fundamental social principle. What's subsidiarity? Subsidiarity is the principle that every community is led at the lowest common denominator. So it's led at, the mayor should be able to make, in his council or her council, should be able to make the decisions applicable to that town. It shouldn't come from Washington, D.C. or Ottawa or London. It should come from your hometown. As much decisions that can be made locally should be made locally, because that the people that have needs are more connected. You can see your mayor. You can walk down the street, you'll probably see your mayor. But the chances of our bumping into the president or a king, it's pretty hard. So recognition of human dignity beyond economic utility. We can't see humans just simply as units on an asset sheet, on a balance sheet. Migration is a moral challenge. So Leo would affirm the right to migrate under certain circumstances, but it demands responsible integration. If I move to Germany, then I better learn German and I better submit to the German way. I can't go there and say you Germans should do it better. I'm there to assimilate if I decide to be German, which I'm not going to, by the way. Requires respect. Listen, I love German beer. I love schnitzel.
Yeah,
I
but
don't love the Germans.
they definitely got their own problems.
You know what? Of all the European people, oh my goodness, what a bag of hammers, eh? So I'm going to get hate mail from Germans now. But anyway, requires respect for both host and migrant cultures. It sees migration through the lens of divine providence, not mere economic utility. So then it's the sovereignty of Christ versus the technocratic globalism. The big theological things I want you to think about. Globalism seeks unity through power and technology. Christ's kingdom seeks unity through love and truth. Truth. Not what the media produces, truth, including the difficult stuff. Human solidarity is a spiritual, not merely administrative reality. And I'll give you some practical implication. So, to reject both extreme nationalism and borderless globalism. The Third Reich, right? I'm trying to separate it out for the algorithm, not quite successfully.
Right.
As an example of unhealthy nationalism. It was a nationalism that built itself up by hurting others. That's not the intent. You can be UK first, America first, Canada first, and not have an unhealthy nationalism. If everybody places their own countries first, we got a whole bunch of strong partners that can help one another, right? And then when you think about it, that's just simply what politicians do when they take their oath. They promise to serve their constitution and their people before globalist needs. So a bunch of strong countries that get over this, whatever we're going through here in the 21st century, excuse me, that'll give us a healthy nationalism, not a bad one. So it rejects both extreme nationalism and borderless globalism. Why? Because St. Thomas Aquinas teaches you must protect the safety and the culture of the existing population. You can't do that if you open up the borders. And let's face it, the people that are crossing are not single moms from Guatemala. There's some really bad dudes, a lot of bad dudes. 20,000 Chinese, apparently.
That's
military aid, military, all male. Real refugees are families. They come. They're like moms with the dad got killed and mom's there with some kids and they're in rags. And these are the refugees you take. When you see a bunch of guys orderly marching through, I mean, what the heck is this, right? And it happened in the last regime.
And
in fact, even liberal journalists ended up reporting on it, he's not a journalist really say, but one of the Weinstein brothers, he went down to the big staging area and he saw it for himself and he said, we're not even allowed to talk to the Chinese work camps. You're not even allowed to go near them. And they're all military age, no women, no kids. They're not refugees.
No.
You going to say something, Felix?
Yeah, no, actually that was my point. It was it's not like it's Mexicans coming from Mexico through the border. You have like Mexicans, you have Africans, you have Middle Eastern,
pick some broccoli and make a living, right? And then go
feed their family.
So there are solutions that we can come up with, right? Like worker programs and stuff. And then maybe if someone works 5 years in a row on that visa, that they can apply for green card or something like that. Like, let's come up with some humane way. Someone's invested in the country. I mean, there's got to be ways, right? Like we want to take the good people. We don't want all these gangs and stuff. So
that's right.
I don't know why this is rocket science. Like I don't know any conservative that's against good people coming here. All right.
Right.
I don't see anybody. I don't know a single, all this stuff is straw men. They accuse conservatives of believing or teaching. And the thing is, well, we want to be very careful. We let only the right people in because it hurts. You know who hurts the most is the communities. Who gets angry at the open borders the most? The people that came here legally, and then they're lumped in with the criminal law. They don't want that.
That's right.
So we got to fix it up. I mean, have you ever gotten any real discrimination, Felix? So Florida's pretty good, I guess. But have you got any discrimination? People just assuming that you were whatever?
No, not really.
Well, that's good.
And you know what? You know what's funny, to your point earlier about assimilation? You used the Germany example. This is a real thing that happened. There was a real story on this. It was a lot of people were going to Mexico. A lot of Americans were going to Mexico. Right. And then there was a complaint from the Mexicans there saying that, they want us to speak English all of a sudden and they want us to change our no, we're not doing that.
Right. No, and the Mexicans are right.
Of course.
The Mexicans are right. Like, I mean, the thing is, like you can't have it both ways, folks, right? Like, it's not fair for, we're rich Americans, we're going to take over half of Mexico and we're going to because we there are these expat communities, a number of these South American and countries too. Like Belize speaks English. So there's a whole bunch of Canadians and Americans, and Costa Rica is another place. When people go down to either avoid tax or just they like the climate better and they like the low cost of living, because you with a pension in US dollars, you can live really nice in a number of these countries there's a bunch of these countries that are safe. Some of them speak English. Philippines is one, Costa Rica, Belize. Well, Costa Rica, I think, speaks Spanish, but there's a lot of people that speak English. There's a whole bunch of expats down there. So, people find them, find these communities. The Brits, they use Spain, right? Like this, because for the warmer weather. So there's whole villages full of British. Argentina is full of Germans, but we won't go there. But anyway,
that's a fun.
I had to get that in there just because I'm being funny.
That's right.
I'm okay. So I'm Scottish, Irish ethnicity. That last name that you guys see on the screen, would you believe it's Gaelic for large amount? Large amount of what? I'd love to tell you charm and wit or holiness, but my mother would say blarney. But my point is, if my mother ever watches this, she's going, why? Anyway. But I had a friend who was German, and we'd go to German food every week. He became a Novus Ordo bishop, but we'd go to German food every week, and at this little place near our seminary. And I thank him. I'll be eternally grateful. He introduced me to German food, because other than the odd toaster strudel, I never had any German food, and was introduced to it. And so I don't mean to be mean to the Germans. It's just that they're culturally, anthropologically, they've got, holy crap. If they were a person, if their whole culture was a person, you're talking they need serious therapy, right? Like, because they've got all the guilt from World War II, but then they go the other way. They become tyrants on the left. Yeah. So it's just, I don't want to get into it. I'm going to get some Germans really mad at me. I love you, Germans. I love your food. I love your beer. I just, I'm not going to let you goose step her. No, sorry. I mean, it's all right. You can make fun of my ethnicity too. I'm from a land of people who like sheep a lot.
We're busting chops here, guys. We're busting chops.
Yes, it's all good fun. It's all good fun. I dish it, but I take it. So you guys can make fun of me too if you want. If there's any Germans online today, you leave a nasty comment about my ethnicity in the chat, in a comment, and I will embrace it in fraternal love. So political influence. We already did that. So here's a prophetic warning, sort of channeling what Leo would see. Okay, he says the globalist project represents a modern form of the Tower of Babel. Wow, yeah. What do you think of that?
I think that's dead on. That sounds dead on.
So the attempt to create human unity through human power alone, the rejection of divine providence, and a fundamentally idolatrous enterprise. Many of you, if you follow me on Twitter, you've heard me say it before. My Lord and God is not some stupid letter on your coexist sticker. All right. So I don't care if you believe in a different faith than me. As long as you treat me respectfully, I'll treat you respectfully. But don't you dare say that my God's the same as yours if you don't follow my faith, because I will get angry, and I will be loud, and I will be obnoxious about it, because no, I'm sorry. You cannot say that one God in three persons is the same as Zeus, is the same as some great prophet, is the same as, no, I'm sorry. It's not going to happen. And treat me with respect. I'll treat you with respect. We can, but I really get upset at that. And the worst people of it are liberal Christians. They're the ones that sell out our Lord Jesus. They didn't even get their 30 pieces of silver. All they got is me irritated. So there you go. So practical guidance to nations and peoples: maintain sovereign integrity, respect cultural distinction, pursue genuine human solidarity, and recognize the primacy of spiritual over economic order. So the churches should be full, folks. And if there's anybody watching here that doesn't give God the honor that he's due Sunday, take this as my admonition to you, okay? It's not me judging you. It's not me thinking I'm better than you. It's not whatever. I'm telling you, give God the honor that he's due. And you say, but Bishop Meagle, all the churches around me are flaky and they're fruitcake and I can't handle them. Okay, well, and you know what you do? You take your Bible and you give God 45 minutes every Sunday. It's not rocket science. It's yes, I hope you'd have a mass, especially if you're Catholic. But if you have no access, then you do what you can. God understands. But what you don't do is neglect God. The third commandment in the Catholic numbering is to give God the honor that he's due on the Sabbath. To migrants and host populations, see migration as a call to mutual understanding, preserve cultural integrity, seek integration based on shared human dignity, and recognize the providential nature of human movement. and also respect your local laws and seek to assimilate and learn the language. And finally, I would say, Leo, if we were talking to Leo, he'd say the ultimate unity of humanity is not technological or economic, but a mystical reality under Christ's kingship. True global communion comes not from breaking down boundaries, but from recognizing the divine order that transcends them. So no great architect. We don't believe in some great architect God of the coexist sticker. We believe in our Lord and King, Word made flesh, our Lord Jesus. And, basically, that's what I have to say about Leo. So is there any comments? We're near the end of our time, and it's actually good timing.
There's one I overlooked, and it's from Cynthia.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna flash it on the screen. This is from earlier, like around.
Right. Did I
9:43.
post that? Did I post that next, Cynthia? I don't know if Cynthia went to bed or I can't blame you.
So she writes that I forgot to mention Carney is buddies with.
So I shared an image, but I don't remember whether I did it on X or not. But I shared it on one of the social media. See, I don't add new people to my Facebook because I have a Father Michael account. I don't really put on there that much, but I have another account that is for my old coworkers, my old classmates and stuff like that. And they didn't know me as a priest. So that's why I don't open it up, because it's just a private forum. But I think I shared it on that, but I might have shared it on X. And if I did, it was an image of Carney with Maxwell. All right. So these guys are all friends, right? They're all friends, and it is what it is. And I don't know what to tell you. I right? Okay, I got a quick story to tell you. So there's a guy, he goes by some silly name. It's like Mr. Sunshine Baby or something is his handle on YouTube. And he's a retired Canadian veteran. I don't know what his old job was, but he in the military. But he told a story. He has this little broadcast. It's I think he's got like 30,000 subscribers or something. He's not doing too bad for a small YouTube channel. Certainly better than my 60, right? You guys get over 50 subscribers. I'm just joking.
Yeah, hit like and subscribe.
That's all right. But all the joking aside, I love this stuff, right? Like I love the idea that you guys you can come here and you can watch a live stream. We're just shooting the breeze, and it's not a formal presentation per se. And so this guy, Mr. Sunshine Baby, whatever his real name is, I don't know where he got that handle. But, he went to the legislature in Victoria, British Columbia, which is where the province house is for British Columbia, the state legislature in Canada, right? So he goes to it. And he was called out by the governor, which Canadians call a premier. He was called out. And they called him a right-wing extremist. They control, they made mock of the fact he was described and introduced as a patriot, and it was considered a slur and a bad thing. And I loved his response to it. It's a recent video. If you look up his channel, he says, "Hey, I assumed the people were calling me a patriot because I served in the military, but they meant it as a slur." And they called him ultra mega and all this, like he's a betrayer of the Canadians. And he's not anti-Trump by any stretch, but he's certainly not, he'd choose his country before a US president. So, and you'd expect him to, right?
Right.
So, but anyway, the reason why I'm telling you guys a story is because there's so many people that like they gaslight you, right? Like they'll call many people who watch something like this, or, or Felix and I, they'll call you extremist or fundamentalist, or I have a line for that too, by the way. I sometimes get called a Catholic fundamentalist, and I just say, well, by fundamentalist, do you mean that I actually believe in this stuff? And they just deal with them, right? Like it's true. What do you mean? Call out these words they use, because a lot of it, don't get angry. Like, don't let them take your peace, folks. Don't let them take your peace. Just ask them a sincere question. You calling me an extremist? I don't get it. You choose not to be offended. Oh, Michael, you're this, you're this, you're this. Am I? How do these people don't know me?
Oh.
I had some guy do a hit job on me on a YouTube channel. He can remain nameless. A cardinal called him Big Man Little Beard. It was pretty funny. The holiest cardinal in the Catholic Church called this guy Big Man Little Beard, implying all that goes along with it, which was just hilarious. Anyway, this guy did a hit job on me, but he did a hit job on two other good Catholic broadcasters the same week. And then so people were saying, well, if this guy hates these other good guys, and I don't know this Miko guy, but he can't be that bad. And so I got a whole bunch of followers and I was happy. I mean, in other social media, obviously not YouTube,
Right.
I'm pretty small on YouTube. But the thing is that it taught me kind of a lesson. Is like these people, they just make stuff up. Like this guy, he just made stuff up. He didn't call me and he say, hey, you know, it wasn't agree to disagree. It's like, Miko, I don't agree with what you're doing. And I don't agree that when you're, you know, say that. That's fine. We could. Isn't it better that you just have open disagreement amongst men and women?
Right.
Why would your first inclination go to be a lie and a hit job on somebody? And you think that God is not going to answer that? You darn right he's going to answer it. Because like I say, 3 weeks later, he's got the holiest cardinal in the church publicly calling him Big Man Little Beard. It was hilarious. I didn't have to do a thing. God did it for me through this holy man. And,
Right.
And it just, so now I wear the, you know, Scott Adams says something, and so does Joshua Lissick. Joshua Lissick is a ghostwriter. He helped, and he's an editor. He helped Scott Adams with his last book on reframing, and he's excellent. So follow him on X if you have an X account. And Joshua and Scott taught me this, and that's basically, well, it's common sense, but it's also useful. Bad reviews from bad people are good,
Right.
right? So if you can get the right people to hate you, you've done something right. So yeah, to Big Man Little Beard, if you ever watch me again, you know, feel free to flame me all you want, brother. You're only helping me, and may the holy name of our Lord Jesus be praised as a result, right? But anyway, so if anyone has any closing comments, other than that,
No, that's it. Yeah, no, you want to lead us out?
Yes. So, folks, we're going to close with prayer. Thank you for joining us. I just want a little quick aside. We are later than we usually do. We normally did start an hour early, and just for fun, I did this experiment. Now we started rising. Like most people watch this channel. Like some episodes get like 700 views, right? But they get them on replay. We don't ever get more than, I think, Felix, what's the record? Something 20, right? It's something like that. It's under 20. Yeah. But anyway, we don't get a lot live, so it doesn't really matter in a way. But it's just that for those of you who want to comment, I don't want to, like, anybody who commented today is a definite regular. And so let me know if you really prefer 8, because I'll listen to you. Because everybody watches the replay anyway. It doesn't matter. The thinking was it gets it out of the way of some other Catholic video casts, and that way people were watching them and eventually they discover us, they can watch us too live. But you know what, I don't mind going back to 8, but I'd like to try this. I'm going to try this for 3 weeks, and you guys let me know what you think after 3 weeks, and if need be, we'll go back to the earlier time. We generally get more people if we're earlier, but we'll just see how it goes.
It's our first time with the new slot, so yeah, we got to
kick
in. Yeah, exactly.
So we'll close the prayer in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. God, our Father, we praise and thank you for all your gifts. We thank you for this time together. Help us pray properly, to see the world as you wish us to see, to help us nudge the ones around us to choose the right path, the path towards your kingship. And may Almighty God bless each and every one of us. Father, Son, Holy Ghost. Amen. I love you all. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And again, I look forward to seeing you next week. God bless
everyone. Good night.